All right, you guys, welcome to Seahawks Forever After Dark. Doing a live stream tonight. It has been a day, hasn't it? Lots going on today. Just when I thought all I was going to have to talk about is the Seahawks being in first place in the NFC West, the 49ers kind of coming back to the pack, losing 3 straight, some struggles there injury-wise, some struggles at the quarterback position. And lo and behold, John Schneider goes and makes a move. A big move, and a move that just last week I didn't think I saw him making. I thought, their kind of current philosophy on building the roster, that they value those draft picks, that they manage their cap very responsibly. I didn't think they were going to make a move for some of the edge defenders or interior defensive linemen that were out there, rumored to be available on the trade market with the deadline coming up tomorrow. Chase Young and Montez Sweat from the Commanders were two of the big names. And then Danielle Hunter of the Vikings was another one. And then there's been a lot of rumors the last couple of days, not just rumors, but reports that the Seahawks were interested in Carl Lawson from the New York Jets. I got a little excited about that one. Didn't think the trade cost would be that extensive, nor would the financial outlay required to get him. And then he would fit the scheme, and he would give the Seahawks another body up front, not just an edge guy. They kind of addressed that need, I think, with Frank Clark after the Nwosu injury, but on the interior defensive line. I wasn't even thinking about Leonard Williams. And when the trade was made, my immediate reaction was excitement, because that's what we need, right? The guy can play 3-4 defensive end. Pete talked in his afternoon press conference today about how he can play inside, outside. He can play over the center even sometimes, but he can mostly plays 3 technique, but he can play 5. He can play that 3-4 defensive end, or as Matty Brown pointed out on Twitter today, the Giants do a lot of things schematically that are similar to the Seahawks when they're in their base defense, but also when they go to even numbered fronts, and he can play with his hand in the ground, or he can play defensive end. Very, very versatile player. 28 or 29 years old. I kept saying 28 earlier on my show today, if you caught that. 29 years old in June. So he would be 30 next year. He's in the last year of the deal he signed with the Giants after they acquired him from the Jets on trade deadline day 4 years ago. He's a guy that makes money. But the Seahawks, this is what I absolutely love about the trade. So we give up a second and a fifth, a second in 2024, a fifth in 2025. But, initially when the trade was announced, it was reported that the Giants were making some concessions. We're going to take on part of the salary. What we didn't know at the time, and found out hours later, is that they converted his salary this year to a signing bonus and paid it. All the Seahawks are responsible for Leonard Williams, a Pro Bowl defensive end with 40 sacks in his career, a guy in the prime of his career, still playing at a high level, is the prorated portion for 10 games of the veteran minimum. So we're going to get into that. We're going to talk about Leonard Williams, his fit, but mostly, this is a live stream. I want to get out of show hosting mode, and I want to get questions from y'all. I want to get your comments, your thoughts on the trade. We got some comments coming in. I'm going to plug those in. And do keep in mind that I am trying something a little bit new, a different kind of streaming software through YouTube Studio. Everything seems to be going swimmingly at this point, but if there are any issues, I apologize in advance, and we'll try to take care of those. So get your comments, your questions in. What do you think of the trade? Grade it. The consensus seems to be it's a good trade for both teams. Mina Kimes took a little dig at John Schneider, thought this was funny, said it was a win-win trade. The Giants move on from a player that they probably weren't going to sign this offseason because they have other guys that they have to pay on that defensive line and elsewhere on their team. They just gave big money to Daniel Jones. They hope to bring Saquon Barkley back next year, etc. So he was a guy they were going to move on from anyway. They basically bought the second round pick. They paid that primary portion of Williams' salary so that they could upgrade that pick in 2024 to a second rounder and then the fifth rounder in 2025. All right, as the comments are coming in from GFGB. First question, second round, WTF. I thought we would use that pick to select a quarterback. Tuck that one away. I'm going to get back to that, okay? Love this pickup. This is from Sean Scotchman. Love this pickup. He's a plug and play on the line, which do we move him into nose and read outside and back? Could make another move. Edge rushers, they can still draft a QB next year. Touched on a lot of things there. We're going to get to all that. But the first question first, I think Jarran Reed stays at nose tackle. The Packers played him a little bit at defensive end last year, and it didn't go well. I don't think it was a fit for his skill set. When he was first acquired this offseason, Griffin Sturgeon, I had him on the show to talk about it, went through some of his tape in Green Bay, and it just didn't look good. Jarran Reed's playing at such a high level right now, and he's such a great fit on that nose. It sounds like Leonard Williams is more of a 3 technique, 3-4 defensive end, or even front defensive end if they go that way, but also a guy that can reduce inside. Very similar to Draymond Jones, so it just gives you more versatility. So I think Reed stays put, and it just bumps Mario Edwards. Basically, that's the spot where I see Leonard Williams playing, and Mario Edwards then gets bumped down to a rotational role, and I think that fits him great. Mario Edwards has been a very solid player for the Seahawks, clearly top 5 in run defense, and the improvements we've seen on defense this year, a lot of it starts up front. And then again, we're going to come back to the QB thing. John Anderson, I'm thinking teams will need to double Leonard Williams. Our other pass rushers could benefit from this addition. That's a great point. We haven't seen the impact plays from Draymond Jones this year. In fact, I think I'd have to look it up. I think he only has 1 sack, maybe a sack and a half. For $53 million, biggest free agent contract Schneider and Carroll have ever handed out. You expect more impact than that. Doesn't seem to be getting any criticism, though. And I think it's just because the defense as a whole is playing so well. He's doing the dirty work. When you watch him on tape, he's eating up blocks. He's the guy getting double teamed because teams aren't that concerned about Mario Edwards. Did I call him Mario Williams earlier? The former Houston Texan first overall pick? I may have. Sorry. I've made a couple of mistakes. I've made a couple of huge mistakes on my 2 shows that I did today. Just adrenaline, excitement. I had just finished prepping for my reaction show, my 5 takeaways show for the Browns win when the news broke. And so then I fired up. I just basically hit record and just went off the cuff without any notes or anything, looked some stuff up live, which I enjoy doing shows that way. So I enjoy the live stream. Haven't done live stuff since draft time, really. So thanks for joining me on this one. And made a couple of kind of funny errors. One was significant enough I had to take the YouTube video down and edit some things out and put it back up again. So I may have called him Mario Williams, but I think it just adds depth and he becomes a rotational player. I just really excited about the fit. Remember the beginning of the off season when Carroll talked about getting more dynamic up front. And really, it's how he answered most of the questions in the offseason. What's the biggest thing you need to do to improve this roster? And he said, we need to get more dynamic up front. And that showed in their activity, personnel-wise, in the offseason. They basically cleaned house, threw everybody out, started anew, right? But he talked specifically about that 49er front and Bosa and Armstead. And then they add Hargrave to it, right? And Cleveland Farrell and some of those other guys. And ironically enough, find this interesting before I get back to some of your comments and questions. I went back over the 2015 draft, and Williams was the 6th pick in that draft by the Jets, right? So he has some history with guys. Played with Geno for a year, played with Jamal Adams with the Jets, played with Julian Love with the Giants, played with Uchenna Nwosu, who he won't get to play with this year, at USC. So he's the 6th pick in the draft. He's the first interior defensive lineman taken, the first defensive tackle. Dante Fowler Jr. went 3rd overall to the Jaguars. That didn't work out great. The next defensive tackle off the board, local ties, number 12, Cleveland Browns, who Mike Holmgren was the GM at the time, right? I think. Took Danny Shelton out of University of Washington and Auburn High School. Go Trojans, alma mater. But ironically enough, at 17, the 49ers took Eric Armstead. And so kind of ever since then, the Seahawks have been chasing that type of player up front. And they really haven't been able to get him. Pete talked in his press conference today about how they were familiar with him because they obviously did the work on him, scouted him, loved him in that draft, just didn't have a shot at him. And then he also talked about how, they had no problem parting with the second round pick. You have to pay to get talent because he said, we just don't get the opportunity to draft up high enough to get these guys. It's why they've had to build that defensive line over the years with kind of second chance guys that flew under the radar, guys that were undervalued like Cliff Averill and Michael Bennett, and second and third round picks. And in this draft, who the Seahawks take? This was the year, 2015, they traded out of the first round to acquire Jimmy Graham from the Saints. And then in the second round, they didn't take their first player in this draft until 63, and that was Frank Clark, who they just brought back. So just a lot of kind of interesting, cool little draft notes here. Let's get back to the comments and questions. But John, I think you're absolutely right. I think teams will have to pay more attention to Leonard Williams now, and we might see Draymond Jones start to make some more plays, some more highlight reel type plays, and start to fill up that stat sheet a little bit more. By the way, the one thing about the combination here is that I can't put your comments on the screen. That's just that YouTube doesn't have that feature, unfortunately. I thought your comments would come through on the third-party software that I'm using, and I could put them on the screen, but that is not working. But let me do this. I'm just going to throw that up there for anyone who, if you want to support the show, you can buy me a coffee or a beer. I had an anonymous guest today buy me 3 beers on that website. Very, very cool. If you're out there, if you're watching, I appreciate it. Okay, setting the edge. Follows me on Twitter as well. Was very, very excited about this trade. He says Pete expects Williams to play 1 to 5 tech, meaning he'll be part of the interior defensive line rotation. That's absolutely true. Another thing that Pete said today that I thought stood out. Sometimes it's funny to catch the things that Pete says sort of subtly. He talked about, he always gives credit to John Schneider and the work that he did, and he was out there looking, and he said, I forget exactly how he worded it. I should have taken that sound. And he said, he used the term, he chose this one. He picked this one because he's such a good fit. Schneider picked a guy that was such a good fit, implying to me that they were going to acquire somebody, and they were working incredibly hard. And so maybe those Carl Lawson rumors were true, but clearly I think everyone would agree, even at a higher cost, Leonard Williams is the better player. Sean Scotchman again, Carl Lawson would be a good one. Several have Seahawks making that happen, but what is our draft capital? We need some to draft a QB. Again, the QB thing comes up. We're going to talk about that tonight. Setting the edge again, he's already played 8 games, so staying healthy. He'll play 18 games total before any playoff games. Let's do that. Let's look at Leonard Williams' career stats. I'd done this earlier. I meant to have it up. And I do have his PFF stuff up here. We'll go over that. We'll go over that in a little bit. Sorry. I Google Leonard Williams and I see one of those headlines come up that I just hate. Seahawks strike blockbuster trade for Giants $63 million star. Quote, massive deal. I hate headlines like that. It's clickbait. It implies that we signed him to a new contract, which I'll get to that. I just want to see his career stats again. Look this up earlier. 39 and a half sacks overall. 39 and a half sacks. He had the big year in 2020, 11 and a half sacks. Although that wasn't his Pro Bowl year. He was a Pro Bowler in 2016 when he had 7 sacks. Interesting. He has been durable. He missed 8 games in 2019, his first year with the Giants. But maybe somebody can remind me, did he hold out? Did he Was that kind of a contract related thing? He played 16 games all 4 years with the Jets, and then he missed 8 in 2019, first year with the Giants. And he played 16 in 2020, 17 in 2021. He did miss 5 games last year. I'm not sure why. Last year was his least productive year of his career. 2019 was with the 5 sacks when he was injured. He had 2.5 sacks last year. Only a sack and a half this year, but he's 17th among interior defensive linemen in pressure rate, according to PFF. By the way, too, if you're just tuning in, we're not just going to talk about this trade today. We'll get into kind of where the team sits and how you feel about him coming out of the Browns game yesterday as well. When you look at his PFF grades historically, very consistent and very good. As a rookie in 2015, came out of the gate with a 79.5. And ever since then, his lowest grade, 2019, again, that's the year he missed 8 games, at 70.6 overall. And then 2020, 79.8. 2021, 71.1. Last year, 77.8. This year, just 67.6. The hit has come in the way that PFF grades run defense. Now, everything I've read today, and Pete talked about it, and then saw a story with a reporter that covers the Giants today talking about what a really outstanding run defender he is. But I also saw some snap counts today that the Giants have used him less this year, that 2/3 of his snap counts this year have come in more obvious passing situations. So maybe some of that depth there and some of the other guys they have there up front, they just weren't giving him as many opportunities to excel in the run game. So his overall score this year, 67.6, but ranks 17th in the league in pressure rate among interior defensive linemen. Let's get back to the comments and the questions. Sean Scotchman again says, A for this trade, it was necessary. Leon Thatch, how rare is getting a defensive lineman like Leonard Williams? Carroll said they've been looking for a player like this for a while. They're hard to acquire. And that's why you make a deal like this and you're willing to give up a second-round pick. Talked about it on my show earlier. What are the chances going into next year? Because let's all agree, without talking about quarterback yet, when you look at this roster now and you think about draft needs next year and beyond, you look at contractual obligations and some needs coming up. I think they go into next year with one of their absolute biggest needs was going to be still adding more dynamic players to that defensive front. Took Cameron Young in the 4th round this year. Took Mike Morris, who had a really promising preseason and is similar to Leonard Williams in that long mold kind of guy they were looking for up there. And then he gets hurt. He's going to miss the year. You need problems up there. You need guys that teams have to game plan for and account for. And even though the results have been better this year, as you get into the thick of it, and you get into that part of the schedule where you're playing better teams, you're playing the Ravens, you're playing the 49ers twice, the Eagles and the Cowboys, they're going to be more equipped to game plan and match talent for talent. When you have guys like Mario Edwards as your starting defensive end, I think teams can exploit that, as solid as he has been. The good teams in the NFL seem to have some things in common, right? And one of the positions that they usually have in common is they have guys on the defensive front that cause problems. And they're hard to get. You got to draft in the top 10 or 15, or you have to pay big money in free agency, or you have to make trades like this. David Joaquin, just watch his tape from yesterday. He dominated in a way we have not seen on our interior. He's a bully that pushes his way through double teams. Sanjit T, who's been on the show a couple of times, YouTube channel, The Football Scout, has already put out a film breakdown showing Leonard Williams with some stuff from his last 3 games, including that game yesterday, which I think was against Commanders. And yeah, he's beaten double teams. He's strong-arming guys. He's using quickness, his hand usage, his really heavy, strong hands. He's rushing from the interior, from the exterior. He's clearing things up so that other guys can make plays. He's a really good player. Like Sanjit said, even with Draymond Jones there and the way Jaron Reed's been playing, that Leonard Williams is the Seahawks' best defensive lineman the day he steps on the field. That's I think he's coming to a place where he's going to excel. I think scheme fit, culture fit, that's another thing. I don't know Leonard Williams. I wasn't studying the draft as intently in 2015. I didn't know if he's a good dude, a leader, a good citizen, if he's had any trouble or not. Turns out he is a Seahawk. He is everything that Pete Carroll and John Schneider grade highly when it comes to acquiring talent. He's a locker room leader. He's an outstanding citizen. He's a hard worker, self-motivated. He's a great dude, and everyone loves him. You can see, let's talk about it. Let's get it out there. I don't think the Seahawks make this move without the idea that nothing's set in stone, but, and Pete alluded to it in his press conference today, that we'd love to bring him back. That he is such a good fit. And this roster is so young and solidified in so many areas that it makes so much sense to do everything you can to figure out a way to bring him back next year, and that they have an eye on that. He's not just a rental, ideally, to use a baseball term. There's a lot of avenues you can get to, but yeah, there's flexibility there. They could sign him to a big enough contract. Somebody came at me today and said, you're excited about this. He's the 37th ranked interior defensive lineman, overall PFF grade, small sample size. I just outlined his entire career. And you're going to pay him $20 million a year next year? No, because you're not going to have to. He's not a $20 million a year player anymore. He's just not. He wasn't before. It was $63 million over 4. Do your math, dude. But he's going to be turning 30 next year. Like, he's just not. That just doesn't happen. He's not going to get a monster third contract. And what do we know about the Seahawks culture? Players love it. I think he's going to be a great fit. I think there's a really, really good chance. Right now, I'd put the odds at more than 50-50 that they made this move thinking this is a guy that can fix a problem and fill a spot moving forward. And so then that second round pick, maybe you don't have to use it. Because I started to say earlier, what are the odds you're going to take a guy in the second round next year that can play 70% of the snaps and be a dynamic force on your defensive line? Pretty light, especially if you're making the playoffs and you're drafting at the end of the second round. Sean Scotchman again. So getting Carl Lawson from the Jets is a possibility. What do we have left to make that happen? I don't know if he fits now, because he plays that similar situation from what I understand. 3 technique, 3-4 defensive end, but can also move out to the edge. You brought in Frank Clark. Now you've brought in Leonard Williams. I don't know that Carl Lawson fits now. If the Jets want to do the same kind of thing and pay his salary just to unload him, but, what are we going to give up for him? I don't know. Carl Lawson, same age, a little bit younger. He's 28. Not as dynamic, not as productive. Very good player. I don't know that you make a move for a guy like that now who's going to play a very limited number of snaps. But are they done yet? What else could they do? They hardly used any of their available cap space, which I haven't checked today, but as of before the Frank Clark signing, it was about $7 million. And we still don't know. I haven't seen anything official. If any of you have, let me know in the comments of what we're paying Frank Clark, what that deal looks like. But there's flexibility left. They could make another move. Do they go out and acquire another offensive lineman? Pete did say today Phil Haynes should be back this week. He liked what he saw out of Stone Forsythe and Jason Peters at right tackle. Abe Lucas is not going to be back anytime soon, it sounds like. He hasn't had a setback necessarily. It's just a slow recovery process. I mean, you're not adding a receiver, tight end, or running back. You're not adding a linebacker. Devin Bush can't even get on the field right now. Maybe you add another interior defensive lineman. Maybe if the Jets just want to get Carl Lawson off the roster, you can give him a late conditional pick for him. But I think he'll probably end up getting more than that. Is there a rotational nose tackle out there that would be an upgrade over Cameron Young? I don't know. I think they might be done. There's room left to do something. I could see them offloading someone willing to give us a pick for D. Eskridge, someone willing to give us a mid-round pick for Mike Jackson, who hasn't been seeing the field. But I think as far as acquisitions go, I think they kind of might be done. Mario Holguin, happy Halloween, Dan. Leonard Williams is a monster. I see what you did there. Similar to what I did with some of the fonts today, right? Deion King, yeah, I think around 7 million cap space. Wade Richards, with the way Seattle has played, do we now have the look at the Seahawks as a Super Bowl calendar team? So this is where we start to tie it all together, right? Where I want to get your thoughts on, before I get into that though, it tolls for thee. I take this to mean Brian Monet's ACL recovery is slow. We won't see him for a while. Nobody asked about Monet today. Carroll didn't offer anything. I had heard that was a pretty complicated knee situation, not just a typical injury. Plus, he's such a big dude; it's always going to make things a little tougher on the recovery, right? I don't know about Brian Monet, but man, what a bonus he would be late in the year, right? As a run stuffing guy on early downs, would just be kind of a luxury at this point. But let's talk about now the Seahawks as a whole. How were you feeling? Let me put it to you this way. How were you feeling about this team and the roster and their development? 5th youngest roster in the league, coming out of that win yesterday to go to 5-2 and take over first place in the NFC West. Say what you want about, they beat a practice squad quarterback in PJ Walker, guy who was in the XFL last year. Or was it the USFL? Or both? He's been around. I thought he looked pretty good though. But keep in mind, that Cleveland defense was ranked number 1 in the league in almost every category coming into the game. They were giving up 160 yards a game passing, and Geno threw for 250. They were giving up 90 yards on the ground, and the Seahawks ran for 115, 120, I think, and only ran it 15 times. Averaged 6.7 yards a carry against the number 1 run defense in the league. It's a team that has had to win ugly at times, but it's also a team that has gotten things done when they had to twice now. Twice. Say what you want about Geno and his penchant for turnovers this year and his inconsistency. Twice this year with the ball in his hands with a chance to go down and score and win a game, he's done it. Lions. And then yesterday. Did it with authority. Still struggled on 3rd down. We did as a whole. There was one stretch there where the Browns stopped us on 7 straight 3rd downs. But how are you feeling coming out of that game? And you can make the argument 5-2, and we should have won the Cincinnati game. Can we all agree on that? 1 play away, 1 or 2 plays away. You're 5-2 coming out of that game, and do you feel like the offense has clicked yet? Feel like they've played their best football? Maybe with Jason Peters and Stone Forsythe moving over to that right side. We've seen Anthony Bradford take a leap the last couple of weeks, but if Phil Haynes is ready to come back, maybe that's an upgrade. Maybe they're ready to have that game where they're more consistent throughout. So were you feeling pretty good about them as a contender then? They're the 2nd seed in the NFC right now as we sit here. And then you go out and you add a Pro Bowl defensive end who can rush the passer and stop the run. Big, long guy, 35.5-inch arms, 6'5", 305 in Leonard Williams. You add him to the mix without subtracting. Yeah, I think you have to talk about them as a contender in the NFC. Super Bowl, I don't know, because Philly, I think right now with what San Francisco's been going through the last few weeks, Philly's head and shoulders above the conference. But it's only been 2 weeks since they laid a dud against the Jets. And Jalen Hurts threw 3 bad picks, including one to seal the game. At the end of the game, it was just a terrible pick. So I said this earlier today, on any given Sunday has never been more true than it is this year. You can never count anyone out of any game. Just look what the Cardinals did that 1 week to the Dallas Cowboys. Setting the edge, multiple sources saying the Giants are picking up Williams' entire contract. Yeah. So what they did is they took his salary for this year and they converted it to a signing bonus and paid it. So the vet minimum, whatever that is, for this year, whatever the veteran minimum is, the Seahawks are only paying 10/17 of that prorated version. That is a steal. Okay, so Shane Scotchman, thank you. Field Goals has indicated, my old friends at Field Goals, that Frank Clark's deal is for 1 year at $1.165 million. How much of that is guaranteed? Let's look that up. It's a live show. I need to get used to the fact that it's a little more laid back rhythm. Let's go to Over the Cap, because let's also kind of look at some implications for next year, shall we? Before I do that, let me see if any. Setting the Edge says Seahawks put 24 points on a defense giving up only 19.1 per game. It's the last year of Jamal Adams' deal, isn't it? My guess they plan to sign Williams against his cap space. Nope. Not only is Jamal Adams under contract for 2 more years, I believe. We'll look that up here in a minute. But they also restructured part of his deal, moving so his dead cap hit and cap hit next year went up. But we're going to talk about how you could potentially re-sign Leonard Williams here in a minute. Bernard Lazama. Gino tried to give the game away yesterday. The end zone throw to DK on the last drive could have easily been a game-ending pick. On the last drive, I don't know, because I watched it again today on the replay. Corner had his back turned. He just didn't get it up high enough to DK there. I see what he was trying to do, but he didn't throw the ball high enough. He did have the 2 picks. Carroll was pretty strong in his language today about how he needs to be accountable for that. And then he had the 1 pick that live looked like it could have been a drop pick 6, but when you watch the replay, the guy really didn't have a chance to catch it. It's a concern. He's three games in a row with 2 interceptions each. Can't have that. Absolutely can't have that. But he also made some big time throws and we needed him. That throw to DK Metcalf, the 40-yarder on the second drive, we don't score without it. He was money on the winning drive. His connection to DK yesterday was interesting. I didn't realize that we had targeted DK 15 times or 14 times. And he caught 5 balls. And some of them, there was the ball. There were 2 big misconnections or miscommunications near the end zone. One, I think on the second drive, where Gino was trying to look like he threw it to the back pylon, like he was expecting a fade, but DK cut it off, kind of ran an in-breaking route on the goal line. And then there was another one too, where it looked like Gino threw it way over DK's head, like they miscommunicated. Apparently DK Metcalf was really sick. Like Saturday night at 9 p.m., Pete said he was violently ill. So maybe he just wasn't all there. He was there enough to make the block on JSN's winning touchdown. So I'll take that. But I thought Gino played a good game yesterday. I think we can have a conversation about expectations for him and also limitations. And then we're going to talk about the future of the quarterback position in a minute. But just to reiterate, Jamal Adams, because it was asked, his contract does run through 2025. And originally, the way it was structured, there would have been an out next year that would have made some sense. They could have gotten out with very little pain next year if they just didn't think he was going to be a key contributor. But because of that restructure, now his dead cap money, the cap savings is only $6 million next year. The dead money is 21. And then in 2025, the cap savings goes to 17.5, and the dead money drops to 10.4. But let's look at team cap space. We'll go to the calculator right now. 2024. Well, this isn't correct. Over the caps, the Seahawks have $17 million in cap space. They do not. It's more like 6 now. It shows they have $61 million available next year. I don't think that's accurate either. Let's check Spot Track. By the way, when I invited y'all to this live stream, I said, feel free to bring a cocktail since it's Seahawks Forever After Hours. So I happen to be drinking. I'm going to take a little sip here. This is Power Cycle Pale Ale from Fort George Brewing in Astoria, Oregon. We actually feature this on tape at El Gaucho where I work. That's my day job or my night job the other days. It's outstanding. The pale ale, it's only 5% ABV, but just really, really easy drinking. Let's try Spot Track. Although I tend to go with Over the Cap because I have heard the implications and the rumors that Spot Track simply lifts their numbers from Over the Cap. Let's see. Team salary caps. Let's go to Seattle here. Yeah, so they're showing, well, maybe they are a little bit more updated. They are showing $7.7 million, but that's probably before the Frank Clark deal. I don't see Clark in here yet. So those numbers must not have been filed with the Players Association yet. But let's look at 2024. Where, oh, here we go. Multi-year summary. I don't like their layout as well. Yeah, I don't like the way they lay their spreadsheets out at all. So we don't know. We don't know what the cap's going to be next year. But assuming it goes up, the Seahawks have $30 to $40 million available in 2024. Now, a lot of that's going to be eaten up by some other things that they've done. But, and I don't feel really confident in these numbers. See, Over the Cap is saying 2024. Oh, okay. I was reading that wrong. Let's stick with Over the Cap. 2023, they say they have $7 million left. And again, I don't see Clark on here or Williams, obviously, because it's so new. So they're probably down to about $5 million cap space. I think they're going to stand pat. Next year says they have about $17 million. That's not a lot. But when you start playing around with the calculator, there are some guys that you can move on from. We can have a conversation about Will Dissly. That would be a $7 million cap savings for next year. We can have a conversation about moving on from Damian Lewis and not paying him. There are some other ways that you can be flexible and you can do restructures or whatever. The cap is real, but it's also kind of a mirage. If the Seahawks want to bring back Leonard Williams, they can. Got a cheers from Bernard. Thank you, you too. Let's see. Adams for 2 more years is correct. DK's block was the good sick. That's from TD. That was a great block. A little bit of talk about how it was a hold. Even on the TV copy, I think, was it Daryl Johnson that was doing color? He made a point that he said, look, he got his hands on the outside, but then he let go. You know, he let go before the official could call it. He said he did a good job as a guy who's made a career as a blocking fullback. If that was Johnson. Do I have that right? Spencer Jones, what's the deal with Wolin? Timely penalties and drops a pick right in his hands. He just seems a little off this year. So it's an interesting conversation. Let's see what his PFF grade looks like. Not that PFF is the end all be all, but it just gives us a point of reference, right? It's certainly worth noting that he only has the one pick. Did have the pick right in his hands. Although, again, when you watch it back, it looks like the ball caught him by surprise. It happened so quickly, he just didn't get a chance to react to it. Excuse me. Maybe I shouldn't drink beer on the air. I think we're going to find out. He missed a ton of training camp. You can't discount that. He missed a lot of time in the first couple of games. There's expectations now, obviously. Brian Baldinger talked to him the other day and he said, hey, interceptions come in bunches. Now that you got the first one, they'll probably come. And he's going to get opportunities because I think we saw it a little bit in the game yesterday, but teams are going to stop trying to pick on Devin Witherspoon. I mean, pick your poison, right? I think Wolin's going to get opportunities. So yeah, we're going to see setting the edge. Yeah, it's 17 million over the cap is saying for next year. Dan Egger, it's going to be fun watching Williams and Reed work. Bernard Lazama, do we keep Jordan Brooks? I think we will be outbid. Pete was adamant, even before Brooks came back from injury, that he's a big part of their future. When they declined the 5th-year option, which was strictly because of the injury, he was adamant that he's a big part of our future. I think Jordan Brooks gets done on a long-term deal. Inside linebackers don't break the bank. You can get him done on a pretty reasonable contract. They'll find a way. They'll find a way to structure him. They haven't done void years very, very often, but I think you're seeing now this Williams move indicates to me that there might be some aggression coming. Like, our window is open in the next couple of years. And maybe the 49ers are showing some vulnerability. And this roster is young. 5th youngest roster in the league. Keep saying that. But it's notable that I think Brooks is a big part of this. I think we're seeing a better version of Jordan Brooks now than we were before the injury. And so, you can't franchise both guys. You can't franchise Williams and Brooks. But I think they get one done and then maybe have the option to franchise the other. Yeah, I think Brooks stays. We were going to look at Tariq Woolen's PFF grades on the season. Let's compare it to last year. So yeah, last year his overall grade as a rookie was 71.6. This year it's 61.9. His coverage grade last year was 77.8. This year it's 63.9. I would chalk it up a little bit to, I don't know, maybe sophomore slump, regression to the mean, right? He was still a very, very raw player who made a bunch of plays early on, acclimated quickly to the pro game, and his physical skills and instincts allowed him to make some plays. There's still going to be a learning curve. We just didn't see that the first 10 games last year. End of the year, we did. We saw some teams pick on him a little bit. We saw him blow some coverages. And, he's not a perfect player. He wouldn't have gone in the 5th round. So, let's just chalk it up to there's still a learning curve. He's still growing, but he's going to get chances over these next few weeks. Setting the Edge says, will they renege Mal for 24-25? Mal. Who's Mal? Playlist Trav, Woolen sophomore slump. Yeah, Setting the Edge says Moose did do color for that game. And he thought the block from DK was excellent, really. All right, explore with Thomas. He's getting in late, but we talked about it earlier. Thoughts on the Seahawks drafting a QB and keeping Geno next year? So Yassine one says you can't franchise William. Is that because we acquired him midseason? Can somebody confirm that? I did not look that up today. You can't franchise a guy that you trade for, acquire before the deadline, or did he have to agree to that? Was that part of the deal? I didn't read anything about that today. All right, let's talk about the QB thing, because I think my opinion on this matter has crystallized over the last couple of weeks. And if you've been watching me for very long, I have been a big supporter of Geno Smith. Well, here's the entire life cycle of my opinion on Geno Smith. I wanted Drew Lock last year. I thought he was the more dynamic player. Thought we were in rebuild mode. I wanted the guy with the arm talent and the ceiling, and I was willing to live with some turnovers. I didn't think we were a playoff team, so let's go with the guy that's got the upside. It didn't help that in the preseason, Geno didn't really do anything to stand out, didn't really do anything dynamic. Turns out I was wrong, and Geno was really, really good last year. And then I became a believer. I believe in the talent. I believe in the mindset. I believe in his approach. I believe in the way he's wired and built, and I love the story. I was fully in support of, I was open-minded to other ideas, but I was in support of signing him this offseason, especially when they were able to get him to agree to the contract they did. I thought it was a no-brainer. And I thought he would take a step forward this year. He hadn't played in 5 or 6 years. And so now he's seen the bullets flying. He saw the league adjust to him a little bit and learn him, make things tougher on him late in the year last year. We added some weapons. The offensive line was going to be better, presumably. We didn't, can't account for injuries, obviously. I haven't seen the step forward this year. I still believe he is what he is. I think he's a very good quarterback. I have made the comparison to Matt Hasselbeck. Matt Hasselbeck, a top 10 to 15 quarterback where you'd be hard pressed to come up with more than 12 or 13 names. And one of these days, maybe on one of those half bye weeks when we have a little bit extra time, I was going to put my NFL rankings together of the 10, 11, 12 guys, whatever the number is, that I actually would take over Geno if he was offered straight up. I used to have this argument with my dad all the time. He hated Hasselbeck. He always fell in love with whoever was backing him up at the time. Thought Seneca Wallace was, the next big thing. Thought Mike Teal, because he had one good quarter in the fourth quarter of a preseason game, was the second coming. Just whoever came along. And I would always say, well, who would you rather have than Matt Hasselbeck? And he would name a bunch of names. And I'd say, okay, how are you going to get him? And then the answer would be, well, you draft a guy. Okay, what's the success rate of that? So, and I didn't like the fit last year between where our roster was and the quarterback class coming out. If Anthony Richardson had fallen to 5, we could have had that conversation. But I'm certainly glad it didn't work out that way because I absolutely love Devin Witherspoon. I think he's such a fit, and he's been a big part of the transformation of that defense. So I like that they didn't force a quarterback pick last year or the year before, and everybody was talking about Malik Willis and some other guys. I just didn't think the time was right. And I thought the fact that they were able to bring back Drew Lock again this year really kind of gave you that extra layer of protection. Now, while I think I still feel the same way about Geno, where he fits in the league and how good a quarterback he is, you can win with him. But he does things every game now that while he makes plays every game that contribute to the win, big time throws, big time decisions, he trusted that pocket late in that game yesterday and delivered the ball when he had to. But we saw a couple of missed opportunities against the Bengals that would have won the game. Wide open guys for touchdowns. Can't have that. Can't force the ball in like he tried to Noah Fant yesterday against pressure. Should have taken a sack there, to be honest. Can't have that on a consistent basis. Once in a while, you want to take a shot. I want to be aggressive. I want more downfield shots. It's a fine line, right? It's a balance. You want to get the ball out quicker. You want to be safer. You don't want to turn the ball over, but you want explosive plays too. Pete talked about that today. Said he thought Geno played a good game, but we need some more of those shots downfield. I think he's leaving some plays on the field. Is it, we talked at the beginning of the season about how this is something new for him. Last year, no pressure. And when Ryan Leaf was on the show, he said the thing he loved about Geno last year is he played with no fear. But this year he's gotten paid. The expectations are there. Is he feeling that a little bit? Maybe he just needs to relax a little bit and kind of let some of that pressure go. And some of it some of it's on Shane Waldron. We can have a whole discussion there about whether he's put Geno in the best position to succeed a couple of times. But while I do believe that Geno is a good quarterback that you can win with, I think you can even go deep in the playoffs with him if you're playing well in all other phases of the game. I think it is absolutely time for the Seahawks to put a plan in motion to have a guy in place. And if they think that's Drew Lock and Lock wants to keep coming back, just like Geno kept coming back, I'm okay with that. But it costs more money. We are coming up on a quarterback draft that, by all accounts, appears to be because of guys that stayed in school for NIL and even some guys that have taken that still, we have Sam Hartman playing his 6th season as a full-time starter because he also had the COVID year in there. And then he came back as a grad transfer. It's going to be a deep quarterback draft. We haven't seen one like this in a while. We've had a couple that have been good at the top, and this one's going to be as well with Drake May and Caleb Williams and some other guys. But I think this draft is going to have guys in the second round, third round, fourth round, fifth round. And Michael Thompson, who writes for 12th Man Rising and studies the draft, we've had him on the show. I talk to him about quarterbacks all the time. And there are some guys. There are guys that are going to be available at the bottom of the first round that are franchise caliber quarterbacks. There are going to be guys available on day 2. Now you traded a second round pick for Leonard Williams. That probably cost you the chance to draft a guy like Sam Hartman if that was your plan. But I absolutely, as I sit here today, would wholeheartedly endorse the idea that we do the Aaron Rodgers thing, that we do the Alex Smith, Patrick Mahomes thing, that you take a guy, whoever that might be, that if you like him, if we end up drafting 25th next year, and it's such a deep draft that, Williams and May goes high, Penix seems to be rising up boards. I thought he might be a bottom of the first round guy. He might be top 15 now. You always have your surprises that are going to sneak in there. JJ McCarthy is a guy that Michael Thompson really, really believes in. He's a guy that might be there in the 20s. Bo Nix is a guy that I've really warmed up to, that I think would fit this offense and that I could see appealing to Pete Carroll and John Schneider. So there might be 5 or 6 guys that are first round worthy. And that's going to push some of those guys down. And with that extra third round pick they have, they have some flexibility. They can move up if they want to. I think you need to put that plan in place. Not necessarily as a guy that could take over next year. If he beats Geno out in the preseason, fine. Great. And the way Geno's contract is structured, you can move on from him and actually save some money next year. But I think Geno's the perfect bridge and a guy you can win with. And I like rooting for him. I do. There are some people that are just not convinced and just aren't going to believe in Geno no matter what. I don't get that mindset, but it's time. It's time to look forward at that position. And they've never done it. Schneider tells us every year that he'd love to draft a quarterback, but the time, and I think some of that's true. But I think teams that draft quarterbacks, teams that find franchise quarterbacks, you find a guy that you believe in, you just make it happen. Right? Free Indeed says, I believe Williams could be franchise tag, but it would be his third tag and it would cost like quarterback money. I think that only applies if you play on the tag multiple seasons, like Kirk Cousins. So if you get tagged, you can't work out a long-term deal. You sign the tag, you play on that deal, then you get tagged again the next year, then the escalators kick in and it goes up. I don't think he's never played on the tag. He was traded to the Giants. He signed a new deal. I'll have to look into that. Michael Crowhorse Chavez. Let's not forget we played the best ranked pass rush in the NFL from here to Jupiter. Yeah, and Myles Garrett had 1 sack and basically very little other impact. It was cool being in the stadium and not hearing. In fact, I had forgotten. I had a Browns fan sitting next to me, and I had to ask him, like, what's Garrett's number? So I can kind of keep an eye on him. Like, haven't seen him. Let's go back up because I have missed some of these. See, again, Yassine 1 says he's already been franchised twice, but he hasn't played on a tag. I'm going to have to look into that. Setting the edge, inside linebackers, Roquan, Leonard, Warner, Edmonds, and Mosley all make over $16 million. Brooks will be a $17 million minimum. I don't know. I don't know if he's considered in that class. Those were guys that were, I don't know. It's an interesting case. I know the Seahawks will do everything they can to resign. They'll make it a priority. They'll franchise Jordan Brooks if they have to. I think they'll plan on that. Jeffrey Mulligan likes my Bo Nix idea. Dre says the Seahawks are winning the Super Bowl. He's calling his shot. NFC's wide open. I mean, Philly's good. And it looked as if Jalen Hurts was having a transition, a little bit of, I don't know, homesickness or, the transition to Shane Steichen not being there and having a new play caller. As someone who is a Jalen Hurts fantasy owner, I mean, he's helping. I'm 7-1. I'm dominating my league. Been high score 5 out of 8 weeks. But he hasn't, up until yesterday, he hasn't had that big game. And then he did have the clunker against the Jets. I was a little concerned about him. Then he kind of banged up his knee, but he's obviously fine. Kevin Long says, I would say Hasselbeck plus, I think is what he's saying about Geno. He's Hasselbeck plus, better arm and pocket awareness, in my opinion. Yeah, I think he has a little bit better arm, although Matt had some underrated arm strength. I think just because of his mechanics. But I remember seeing, might have been his first year with the Seahawks because it was in the throwbacks. It was in the silver helmets, which he only wore, I think, his first year here. And they were playing the Raiders down there. And he had a ball. He was throwing from the far hash. He was throwing a 10-yard out from the far hash. And he had a guy in his face. He threw it off his back foot. And it was a seed. And I remember at the time thinking, I didn't think he had that kind of arm. Michael Crowhorse says, good evening. Thanks for your podcast. It's informative. I appreciate that. I do. I try to make it informative. I try to make it, part opinion. I talked about this on my show today. Like, I try to balance. I keep using the words balanced and thoughtful. I try to balance my fandom and how passionate I am. And sometimes I can get a little irrational and emotional, but I try and balance that with the analytical side of my brain and how much I just like analyzing what goes into building a team, building a roster, putting a team together, clubhouse chemistry, game planning, scheme, and also my background as a journalist and broadcaster. And I try to put those things together. So it means a lot to me when someone recognizes that. And I appreciate the compliment. Dre says you need to take a risk in order to get the offense going. I do agree. I think, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. And then he goes on to say Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Mahomes all have a lot of interceptions because they're taking big risks, trying to make big plays. Geno's never going to be that guy. I don't think he's ever going to be that guy that when things aren't going well defensively or where he can just go out and put you on his back for an entire game and win a game for you. He's not that kind of player. I think the other pieces have to be there. You can make that same argument about a talented young quarterback. So I just think it makes all the sense in the world. It's kind of the last piece, isn't it? Like the fact that Schneider and Carroll have stayed together through this whole thing and have basically built a contender again after things went so poorly after the back-to-back Super Bowls. And they basically had to tear that team to pieces. And then they had 4 or 5 bad drafts and some trades that didn't work out and some bad free agent signings. To be back where they are now is pretty remarkable because most GMs and coaches don't get a second chance. And so the kind of the last piece to me feels like getting your next franchise quarterback. And I think, and I have to say this, when they made the Russell Wilson trade, I fully believe, I 100% believe that they wanted Geno to come back as a bridge, but that they were going to draft a quarterback. And they were going to find a guy, maybe not that first year, but the second year, and start over on a rookie quarterback contract. And then Geno came out and basically took the job and proved to them that he could be a guy that players wanted to follow. And it changed their plan. And kind of fast forwarded things in some ways, but that's that one missing piece. Got to get that quarterback. And we're going to talk about that a lot as we get closer to the end of the season and this offseason. I can't wait for draft season, film breakdowns and getting draft experts on. And we're going to dive deep into quarterback this year. I can sense it. This team is feeling more LOB now than ever from Kevin Long. Kind of feels that way, doesn't it? Because of the style of play. Like They're hitting guys. This team is physical and they're making plays. Up until last year, I feel like we were in sort of a 4 or 5 year rut of just blasé defenses where you just hoped that they would get off the field, that a quarterback would miss a throw on third down. They didn't have playmakers. And now they're all over the field. And each week it's a different player or two stepping up. Jamal Adams had a kind of a quiet 8-tackle day yesterday, just sort of playing his stuff. He wasn't really rushing the passer. He wasn't up on the line of scrimmage a lot. And then with the game on the line, he comes in on a blitz and takes Teller on, one of the better offensive tackles in the league, or offensive guards, head on, and just sacrifices his body to go up against him. The ball ricochets off his helmet, and Julian Love hauls it in for the interception. They go down and score. Each week it's someone different. Devin Witherspoon kind of had a quiet game yesterday, but other guys made plays. And Bob, can we talk about Bobby Wagner? I mean, you talk about a guy, my goodness, 14 tackles yesterday. I think he's all over the field. He's getting tackles for loss. He's rushing the passer. Jordan Brooks is rushing the passer. The way they're using him and how healthy and young he looks is, do any of us have a question at this point? I know he said he was going to go year to year now at this point. Do any of us have any question that he won't be back next year? He sure doesn't look like a player who's in his last year, does he? Let's see. We've got a couple last ones here. Michael Crowhorse again. Michael Crowhorse Chavez. Rotation scheme, style, hits, rotation scheme, discipline, momentum, creates advanced momentum, equals energy, ruthless defenders born, or boom X baby. Yeah, it's fun defense. It's a fun damn defense. And Michael thinks that Bobby has 3+ years left in him. I don't know if I'd go that far, but my goodness. Poop Dog says main sports media ignoring what's happening in Seattle. East Coast bias. Keep sleeping on us. Go Hawks. Well, that's going to change. Let's talk about this Ravens matchup. That is going to change if the Seahawks can go to Baltimore and beat the Ravens this week. The Ravens are 5-2 also. Let's look at the standings. Let's pull this up. Baltimore beat Arizona yesterday, just by one score, though. They're 6-2. They are the number 2 defense in the NFL. So we go from playing the number 1 ranked defense to the number 2 ranked defense. But the Ravens have a much better offense. They're right around where the Seahawks are scoring-wise, at averaging 24, 25 points a game. New offense. Todd Monken is that the offensive coordinator. A little more diverse passing game now for Lamar Jackson. And it's going to be a big test. Big test. Another 10 a.m. East Coast time. Their point differential on the season is 81 right now. That leads. I was going to say, because the Dolphins were clearly leading for a while. Actually, the Buffalo Bills have sort of quietly jumped out in front. They lead the NFL in point differential at plus 86. The Ravens are plus 81, so they're number 2 in the league. But that's going to be a tough one. The reason I say that people are going to notice if the Seahawks win this one is because CBS put their number 1 team on it. So it's going to be Jim Nantz and Tony Romo doing that game. It is going to be their national game. And so that's 1:00 on the West Coast with Nantz and Romo. So if there was ever a time for the Seahawks to make a statement, one that doesn't involve a rivalry game or anything else, this is kind of a sneaky big one. It's also one of those games that, honestly, I don't know how much pressure they have, because what if they lose? If they lose, they fall to 5-3, and it's a non-conference game, and they would be tied with the 49ers coming off their bye. Like, it's one of those games where I hope they go into it with that mindset. Let's go. Let it all hang out. Have some fun. play hard. Let's unveil Leonard Williams to the world. Another week of practice for Frank Clark. Let that defense, hopefully they have a good plan for Lamar. They certainly have the pieces. My goodness. Is there any team in the league right now that's more equipped, I guess, to face the Ravens? Gus Edwards had 3 touchdowns yesterday. Is he a dynamic runner, though? No. A healthy J.K. Dobbins would be, but he's out. Who's their other guy? Is it Justice Hill? But I mean, you want to spy Lamar? Okay. You can play Witherspoon in the slot. You can play Jamal. You can have Julian Love be that slot guy that's spying him. You can go 3 linebackers like the Seahawks have done at times. They had Devin Bush active again, and he was out there a couple of times with Brooks and Wagner. You could do that. Because you got to account for Mark Andrews too. They love to use the tight end there. I think the Seahawks defense might be as well equipped to match up against the Ravens right now as anyone. Question is, against that defense on the road, can this offense succeed? And I think to do that, they got to run the ball. I was going to say better, but 6.7 yards per carry against the number 1 rushing defense in the league is pretty good. But they only ran it 15 times, and one of those was the end around to Jake Bobo. They need to have a more consistent presence in the running game. They need to have a physical running game against the Ravens. Live TV, this big game, statement game. Jeffrey Mulliken, 1 game at a time. Absolutely. There's no reason to look past this game. You have the Washington Commanders coming in next week. So, this you're going to hear this. You're going to hear this term. We can play a drinking game this week for how many times Pete says championship opportunity. Right? Sean says, play some backyard football, have some fun, no pressure, but play smart. Game plan, could win. They're going to be as healthy as they've been all year. Really came out of this game without any serious injuries, and they might get some more guys back. Kenny McIntosh might be ready. Don't know what kind of role he'll have with Walker and Charbonnet both healthy, but just another layer of depth. And then even though you just added Leonard Williams, Austin Fialou might be ready this week. And if that's a name that none of you recognize, he's a guy the Seahawks signed this offseason, sort of a sneaky, quiet free agent signing because he had played in the XFL last year for the Seattle Sea Dragons. He was all XFL, played at the University of Oregon. He's one of those guys built not dissimilar to Leonard Williams, 6'4", 305, can play nose, but also defensive end. And a guy that Bob Condotta was adamant about this offseason that the coaching staff really liked. And then he got hurt, but they kept him on the roster. They didn't IR him all year. They didn't redshirt him. They put him on the pup because they thought he could contribute this year. So that's just another. Now you've added Frank Clark, Leonard Williams, and you might get Fialou back this week or next. Cameron Young's been playing 20% snap counts. He was in there on the last offensive drive for the Browns. So they're trusting him more and more. You're starting to get just more dynamic depth there up front. Who can match our running back 1-2 punch? I don't know, especially with all the injuries around the league. Maybe at the beginning of the season, you could have said David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs in Detroit, but Montgomery's been banged up. Running back injuries are such a thing. The Seahawks should feel blessed that not only are Walker and Charbonnet 100% healthy, but that now McIntosh is coming back and you have DJ Dallas. Like, they're as healthy at running back as anyone in the league right now. Dan Egger, fewer penalties, please. Yeah, 7 more penalties, and they come at key moments. They come on third downs. Pete talked about it today. He's really frustrated. You could tell the frustration. He was saying, we're like 28th in the league right now. He said, I just want to get out of the 20s. Let's just take one at a time. And some of those are ticky-tack. The pass interference call on Woolen, the hands to the face on Woolen. Certainly were ticky-tack, but I think they come because, first of all, the hands to the face thing was an emphasis this week from the league, I guess. And so that one looked like he barely grazed the bottom of his face mask, but it happened early in the route, and the official it looked like one of those plays where he was looking for it, threw the flag as soon as he saw it. But they have that reputation as being a handsy team, and so I think they get more calls, which we've benefited from it a couple times this year. We didn't get called on the DK Metcalf block yesterday. That obviously was a good thing. The end of the Detroit game, some people thought that Aiden Hutchinson might have got held by Jake Curran there. So it hasn't all gone against us. And then we had another big third down play yesterday where Mario Edwards went helmet to helmet against PJ Walker, and that extended a drive. Those are the plays. We had the offsides in Cincinnati, on Jaron Reed on the third down that extended the second drive for them. Those, they got to clean up the penalties. Absolutely. Bernard says it's more about run attempts. Yeah, you got to have more than 14 designed runs to your running backs when they're that good. Setting the edge says with the Ravens, Commanders, 49ers twice, Eagles, Cowboys still ahead. If the Hawks can get 4 wins in those 6, they'll be a deep playoff contender. I would agree with that, because if you look at the last 3 games on their schedule, it's Steelers at home. I'm not a Kenny Pickett fan, and I think that my opinion on that has been justified so far this year. And then they finish at Arizona, a game I plan to go to. And is it Titans that's mixed in there too? You get past that gauntlet of games. And Titans. So you come home again against the Commanders. Then you have the rematch at the Rams, potentially without Matthew Stafford still. They just brought John Wolford back today. Brett Ripien's the starter there right now. So you come home against the Commanders. You don't know what you're going to get from them. They've looked good some weeks. They've really struggled other weeks. Then you go to the Rams. Then the gauntlet. 49ers at home on Thanksgiving. Dallas a week later on Thursday Night Football in the throwbacks again. At 49ers. Eagles at home. And then you finish at Titans, which could be Will Levis, Malik Willis by then. At home against the Steelers, at Cardinals. So those 4 to 5 games are going to be everything. So they're getting healthy. Let's hope that continues. And we get these new guys acclimated. Frank Clark still looked like he had some juice yesterday. Seems like we match up well with all the good teams. Ron Chandler with that. Got to run the ball 25 to 30 times. That's pretty extreme. I don't want to see that. If you're only running 50 plays a game, I don't want a repeat. I thought we ran the ball too often against the Cardinals, to be honest. 24 first downs, we ran at 16 of those. And 8 of those times we ran it on second down also. That's too predictable. Let's be varied. Let's be balanced. But 15 touches when you're averaging 6.7 a carry, that's not good enough. Not against good teams. What happened to Mike Jackson? Going to keep Eskridge. I don't know if there's a market for Eskridge. He hasn't been able to stay healthy. There's a lot of guys. I think every team kind of has a guy like him, right? I don't know. If someone wants to give us, what's the value of a 4th receiver? A 5? I don't know. Jackson might have some value, but he's in the last year of a deal. Again, I think you're talking about a conditional late round pick for either of those guys if you are able to trade them. Sean says, nice. Sean says, thanks, Dan. Great discussions. I'm coming from Kamloops, BC, Canada. Been a Seattle Seahawks fan since the beginning while growing up in Seattle. Love the throwbacks. It's funny that when we had those uniforms, I thought they were kind of homely. But now it's the modern fit, right? The smaller pads, they're tighter, the color's brighter, the matte color on the helmets. They looked spectacular. And the thing that I really liked them too, I like the new uniforms too. But a funny thing happened yesterday at the stadium because you're seeing 2/3 of the fans walking around in their new throwbacks they bought and some old ones from people that still had them mixed in. And then about 1/3 of the fans wearing the new jerseys. When you see them side by side, as much as I thought I liked the current jerseys and uniforms, it's no contest. And the thing watching the stadium, I'm in the 300 levels, section 328. Love the angle from up there because you can see everything develop. But with the new uniforms, sometimes the number's hard to see. Not with those throwbacks. God, they're clean. They look great. So glad they're going to wear them again. for the Thanksgiving game. Jeffrey Mulligan says, need a fullback. Nick Bellore is a battering ram. Well, they're paying him. He's listed as a fullback on the roster, and they never use him. I'd like to see something, when they get down to the goal line, because they've had trouble in the red zone, obviously. Two thoughts real quick. 2 weeks ago, we saw them try the Philadelphia Eagles 4th and 1 thing, right? Where they had DJ Dallas line up as the quarterback, which I like because you're not risking your quarterback getting hurt. They were in that same formation. I thought we had the big guys in the middle to make it happen. And then I think Damian Lewis jumped off sides or false start. And then they never went back to it ever. And they had another 3rd and 1, 4th and 1 later in that game. We haven't seen it again. Like, why do you spend, drives you crazy. Why do you spend that time, practicing that play and then you're never going to use it again? But what I like when you're down close, especially with our running backs, I like that there are times that Waldron finds a way to have Charbonnet and Walker on the field at the same time. And usually he'll send one out in motion or split one out wide and motion him into the running back position. Because I just think that stresses the defense so much. I used to, during the rare times when Chris Carson and Rashad Penny would be healthy at the same time, I used to scream for Schottenheimer, try and figure out a way, put him on the field at the same time, go 2 backs. But what I'd like to see down close is how about a guy like, it's too bad Levi Bell isn't active because he actually played some fullback in college, but a big dude, like if Phil Haynes plays next week, how about Anthony Bradford? Right? How about line him up as a fullback? You want to take that dude on, 340 pounds coming at you with Walker or Charbonnet running behind him? How about Jake Curran? He's kind of a mauler. Throwback uniforms in the Super Bowl. I wonder if they would allow that. They're only allowed twice. Does the Super Bowl count? I don't know. I saw a weird story today, speaking of throwbacks, where I don't know if it was verified, but it came from a big account that the NFL has told the Tennessee Titans not to wear those throwbacks anymore because of potential trademark infringement. Well, A, doesn't the NFL have to approve when you're wearing your uniforms? They have to approve the designs. And B, don't they own the trademark? Thought that was a weird story. Yeah, setting the edge. Time to replace Bellore with another guy who can play both ways and special teams. 2 words, Levi Bell. I talked about that at the cut down to 53 this year. Some of my prediction shows. I don't know why, just for special teams, that he has a roster spot. Although I saw yesterday, one of the reporters said that there was a red zone play yesterday where a goal line play where they put Bellore in at linebacker. I didn't see that. I was going to go back and look. I haven't gotten the all 22 yet. I don't rank highly enough, I guess, with the league. I always get mine like late on Monday or early Tuesday when, by that time, like Michael Sean Duger has already tweeted out 20 different all 22 plays. But it's, I haven't seen it yet, but I heard that had happened. I think we've covered just about everything, right? Anything else anyone wants to add? This was fun. The live thing is something that I'll do intermittently. And I just thought I've been waiting to do this. Today was a perfect example because we kind of had this cross section of stories where, Seahawks are in first place coming off a good win. And then they make the big move for Leonard Williams. So later this week, a couple things to look out for. First of all, if you guys don't have the PSF app yet, get it, Android or Apple. If you don't know what it is a fan-driven app where you get to interact, and we have media casters, as we're called, and I'm on there with Dana O'Gorman, who, if you ever listen to the Field Goals podcast before Seahawks Forever, we co-hosted that together. We do a couple of things. We do a midweek show every Wednesday, usually at 10 a.m. Pacific time. This week it'll be at noon. It's a free app, and think Manning cast, but you get to be involved instead of all the celebrities and the special guests they bring on. So it's best of both worlds, I think, when you talk about like social media and fan engagement apps. it's kind of like Twitter in the sense that the Seahawks chat room is always open. You can always be posting screenshots in there and breaking news. And I didn't even get a chance to get in there today to see, all the stuff about Leonard Williams because I was so busy on the show. I've been working on this stuff all day. So you can always do that. And then we live stream. We have the live stream shows where Dana and I just pop on and we start talking live. And then we can bring you into it. So you can chat along just like you are here. And we can react to comments and questions, but we can actually bring you in on video. It's pretty cool. And the most fun is that we live stream during games. We have been doing all of the road games. And so this Sunday, while the Seahawks are playing Baltimore, we will be watching the game and we'll live stream it at the same time. So you can watch the game too. And then however you watch the game and then react to it with us. And then there's even, there's a game tracker and there's live stats and all sorts of stuff in there. PSF, Pro Sports Fans, Sean Salisbury, the former ESPN anchor, now does sports radio in Houston. And one time Seahawks quarterback, Sean Salisbury is the president of that company. It's pretty good stuff. In fact, if you go back in my library about a month or so, I had him on the show. We talk about the app. We talk about his time in Seattle and his thoughts on Geno Smith. It's a pretty good episode that for some reason didn't get as many views as I thought it would. So check that out. And then otherwise, if you don't follow me on Twitter, that's at Seahawks Forever. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, of course, because that's the best way to keep up with things. If you listen on Apple or Spotify or whichever other podcast app or Amazon, I'm on all of those. You can subscribe there too, so you don't miss episodes. And on Spotify, if any of you listen on Spotify, I want to apologize because it's ad driven, and I get a little bit of kickback from that. But typically, I've been inserting the ads myself into the Spotify episodes, and I cap it at 2. They released a beta version to me a couple weeks ago, and I didn't do any research on it, but it was called Smart Ads, where basically I just select it and their AI or whatever decides where to put the ads in. I just assumed they would put 2 ads in. They put way more than that. So I apologize for that. I won't select the smart option anymore. I'll just keep doing it myself. So it's 2 only. But that being said too, you can subscribe on Spotify for ad-free episodes. And I've set it at 99 cents a month. If you want to do that, I have a couple of subscribers already, and then you get uninterrupted episodes. And then if you just really like what I do, you can see the QR code there on the screen. It's called Buy Me a Coffee is the name of the site. But I like to have a little more fun with it. And I say, you can buy me a beer too. And many of you have, and I really appreciate that. It's very cool. I love this kind of interaction. I'm going to keep doing some research into how I can use YouTube together with my streaming software, because I'd like to be able to post your comments and questions on the screen, which in my other software I was able to do. And I haven't been able to do this. So thank you for the support. It's been a really, really fun year. I can't wait for the rest of this season. I think this is going to be a really exciting season. It's a fun up and coming team. They play a fun style of football. They're coming together. It does kind of remind you a little bit of 2011-12, right? Maybe a little something is brewing there. So let's keep talking. Let's stay connected on Twitter. And later this week, I'll probably have a Ravens preview show of some kind. I'm trying to reach out to a couple of people that cover the Ravens. If I can get somebody on to talk about it from their standpoint, we'll do a proper preview show. Otherwise, at least look for, I'll do some stat comparisons and things like that later in the week. And then also figure out something to do a film breakdown on this week. I was thinking about looking at maybe some of the offensive line play, maybe looking at Stone Forsythe or Anthony Bradford and their performance, what they did to neutralize Cleveland yesterday, and maybe look at that offensive line. But I'll figure it out. And you know how you keep up with it? Subscribe, and then you don't miss out on anything. So let me do this real quick, just to kind of be formal here, even though this isn't, the live stream is a little more informal. Let's just break, throw the music in there. I am Dan Viens. Thank you again for watching and supporting the show. I really appreciate it. Until next time, forever and always, go Hawks. See ya.